They called him a hero once. But some ghosts don't salute you. They wait for you. This is the story of Walter Briggs, a forgotten soldier, and the man who waited 50 years to settle a debt written in blood. The rain always came at night in Glenvale, soft, steady, and unrelenting, like the memories Walter Briggs could never wash away. The old man sat by the window of his dimly lit living room, his reflection a fragile ghost on the glass. The light from the single table lamp painted long, trembling shadows across his wrinkled face. His hands, rough and trembling, gripped a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee. It tasted like rust and time. Behind him, the silence of the house pressed heavy. No wife. No laughter. Just the slow tick of an old mantel clock, a metronome marking the rhythm of a life winding down. On the shelf above the fireplace sat a single photograph, framed but dusty. Echo Squad, 1971. 12 soldiers, grinning in the harsh sunlight of a jungle far from home. Walter's eyes lingered on their faces, tracing each one as if he could call them back. Ray, Thompson, Luis. Men who should have grown old. Men who should have been sitting here, drinking coffee, cursing arthritis, remembering better days. But only 3 came home. And Walter was the last one left alive. He leaned closer to the photo, the glass fogging slightly with his breath. You boys ever stop shouting in my head? He whispered. His voice cracked like brittle paper. He could still smell the jungle, the rot, the gunpowder, the metallic scent of blood thick in the air. And beneath it all, the stench of betrayal. Captain Richard Harris. The name still burned in his chest like shrapnel that refused to heal. Harris had been their commanding officer, sharp, confident, and charming enough to make anyone believe in him. But charm doesn't stop bullets. Loyalty does. And Harris had none. Walter remembered that night vividly, the echo of gunfire, the chaos of an ambush. Harris had shouted an order to hold position, then vanished into the darkness with the radio. The squad waited for extraction that never came. By dawn, half of Echo Squad was dead. The rest captured, tortured, or left crawling through the mud to die. Harris was reported missing in action. But deep down, Walter knew better. You don't forget a man who runs when others bleed. For 50 years, he carried that truth alone. Buried it under quiet days, bad coffee, and the small mercy of forgetting. Until one morning, the past came calling. The television hummed faintly, filling the silence. Walter wasn't really watching until he heard a voice that froze his blood. Deep, confident, older, but unmistakable. The local news anchor smiled beside a tall, silver-haired man in a suit. The caption read, "Veteran hero turned philanthropist, Richard Harris." Walter's mug slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. Coffee spread across the worn rug like spilled blood. His breath came shallow, uneven. It couldn't be. But there he was alive, smiling, celebrated. A man who'd built a life on the graves of the forgotten. "You son of a bitch," Walter whispered, his voice trembling between disbelief and fury. "You don't get to live clean." He stood, knees aching, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. Slowly, he made his way to the bedroom. Under the bed, a metal trunk waited, untouched for decades. When he opened it, the scent of oil, iron, and old leather filled the air. Inside lay fragments of a younger man's life. A tarnished compass, a folded field map, a combat knife still sharp, and the metal Harris had pinned to his chest weeks before he vanished. Walter lifted the metal. It gleamed faintly in the lamplight, a cruel reminder of false honor. "You pinned this on me, Captain," he murmured. "Guess it's time I returned the favor." Outside, thunder rolled over Glenvale, and rain streaked down the glass like tears on a soldier's cheek. Walter Briggs, 78 years old, forgotten by time, closed the trunk and straightened his back. For the first time in decades, he felt alive. The war wasn't over. It had just been waiting. Morning came gray and heavy, the sky sagging under the weight of clouds. Walter woke before dawn, muscles stiff, heart unsteady. For a long moment, he sat at the edge of his bed, staring at his hands that once pulled triggers, set traps, and stitched wounds in the dirt. They trembled now like leaves in wind. Still, he rose. The kitchen light buzzed softly as he brewed black coffee and spread a map across the table, a printed satellite image of the town and the surrounding countryside. A red marker traced paths, roads, and distances. His eyes, though dulled by age, scanned every detail with the precision of a soldier who never stopped observing. He circled a name in bold letters: Richard Harris, Riverside Estate. Each morning, Walter walked farther. First to the end of the block, then the next street over. His knees protested, lungs burned, but the pain was part of the ritual. He lifted old weights, practiced quiet steps, steadied his shaking hands by balancing a glass of water on the edge of the table. The soldier inside him was still there, buried, but not gone. At night, he scrolled through veteran forums, hunting for traces of Harris. It didn't take long. The man was a public figure, charity events, security contracts, speeches about honor. Every photo made Walter's jaw tighten. He whispered into the dark to faces long gone. "Ray? Luis, I'm doing this for you." The house remained silent, but in that silence, Walter felt something stir, the same cold focus he'd once known in the jungle, the calm before the ambush. He was old, yes, but he had one mission left. And this time he would not fail. Night had always been Walter's ally. Back in the jungle, darkness meant survival. Now, decades later, it was his accomplice once more. He sat at his kitchen table beneath the low hum of a single bulb, a notepad before him filled with shaky handwriting. Every detail mattered. Every step had to be exact. Richard Harris was hosting a Veterans Gala in 2 weeks, a grand event at his Riverside mansion, celebrating service and sacrifice. The irony nearly made Walter laugh. The coward celebrating courage. The papers listed the guest list, the schedule, even the name of the catering company. It was all there, the perfect cover for justice. He began forging a letter, an invitation request written under a false name, representing a fictional veterans foundation. The handwriting was slow, deliberate. His old training came back in whispers, reminding him how to blend in, how to move unseen, how to listen before acting. Age had taken his speed, but given him something better: patience. During the day, he tested himself. How long could he stand without trembling? How far could he walk before his breath failed? Every small victory mattered. He practiced controlling his voice in the mirror, lowering it to a calm authority. He wasn't just planning revenge, he was rehearsing a reckoning. At night, the ghosts returned. He could see the faces of his brothers in arms, hovering at the edges of his dreams. "You sure this is justice, Walt?" one voice asked. He never answered, because deep down he wasn't sure anymore. But what he was sure of was that Harris didn't deserve peace. Not after what he'd done. As dawn crept through the window, Walter capped his pen and whispered, "It's time for the truth to march again." The night of the gala arrived like the calm before a storm. Walter Briggs stood before his mirror, buttoning the jacket of his old uniform, the one that still fit, mostly. The metals glimmered faintly against the faded fabric, tiny sparks of memory pinned to his chest. His reflection looked back at him, an old soldier with eyes that had seen too much, carrying a silence the world had long forgotten. He took one steadying breath, straightened his back, and whispered to the ghosts that lived behind his eyes. "Watch me, boys. This one's for you." The drive to Riverside Estate was long and quiet. The car's headlights cut through mist, illuminating a mansion that loomed like a fortress of glass and stone. Music drifted through the night, violins, laughter, the clinking of glasses. The scent of roses and champagne hung in the air. But beneath it, Walter smelled something else: arrogance. At the gate, he presented his forged invitation. The young attendant smiled politely, barely glancing at him. "Welcome, sir. Enjoy the evening." He nodded. Old men were invisible. No one looked twice at a veteran in a faded suit. Inside, chandeliers spilled gold across the marble floors. The crowd glittered: politicians, businessmen, and decorated officers with clean hands and dirty histories. Walter moved slowly, cane tapping softly on the polished tiles. Every step echoed like a heartbeat counting down. And then there he was, Richard Harris. 79 years old, but proud as ever. Silver hair, sharp suit, that same commanding presence that once made men believe in him. Walter's chest tightened. 50 years had passed, yet the sight of that man ignited something ancient and raw. Harris was laughing with guests, basking in praise. "It was all about brotherhood," he said, raising his glass. "We fought for each other." Walter's fingers curled around his cane. He could hear Ray's dying breaths in the mud. Luis screaming his name through gunfire. Brotherhood. The word tasted like ash. When the speech ended, Walter stepped forward. "Captain Harris," he said softly. The man froze. His smile faltered, eyes narrowing as recognition struck like a blade. "Do I know you?" Walter smiled faintly. "You did once." 1971, Black Veil. The color drained from Harris's face. "That's not possible." "You." "I survived," Walter interrupted. "Most of us didn't." The noise of the gala faded behind them, replaced by the pulse of the past. Harris stammered. "I don't know what you think you know." "Oh, I know plenty," Walter said, voice low and calm. "I know you ran. I know you left us to die so you could live to build this empire of lies. And I know," he leaned closer, "that the truth is finally coming for you." Harris tried to step back, but Walter's hand steadied him, as if helping an old friend stay upright. He slipped a small device into the man's pocket, a recorder, already capturing every trembling word. "You're finished, Captain," Walter whispered. "Your men never left you. We just took our time catching up." As applause erupted from the other end of the hall for another toast, Walter turned away, his heart pounding but steady. He didn't look back. Outside, the night air was cool and sharp. The mission was complete, but the war, not yet. He walked into the dark, rain beginning to fall, whispering against his shoulders like old comrades welcoming him home. By morning, the world would know the truth, and the forgotten soldier would finally have his revenge. Morning crept into Glenvale with a quiet gray light, thin as breath. The world felt still, too still, as if it knew something sacred and terrible had just ended. Walter Briggs sat on his porch, wrapped in an old blanket, a thermos of coffee cooling by his side. The chill in the air bit at his fingers, but he didn't mind. For once, the silence didn't hurt. On the small radio beside him, the news played. The voice of the reporter sounded distant, almost reverent. In breaking news, decorated veteran and philanthropist Richard Harris is under investigation after new evidence surfaced linking him to a wartime desertion incident during Operation Black Veil. Walter's lips pressed into a thin, trembling smile. The words rolled through him like a slow tide, not triumph, not relief, but something deeper, heavier. The kind of peace that doesn't feel good, only true. He could almost hear the boys again, Ray's deep laugh, Thompson's bad jokes, Luis humming that same song under his breath during night watch. The memories used to torment him. Now they just sat quietly beside him, like old friends keeping him company one last time. He had mailed the recording anonymously, just as planned. He hadn't needed to face Harris again. The world had done it for him. Within hours, Harris's empire had cracked under the weight of his own sins. Investors fleeing, military honors revoked, interviews canceled. His face, once polished and proud, now stared back from every screen, hollow and ashamed. Walter had watched the footage once. Harris sitting before cameras, denying, deflecting, then faltering when the recording played. His voice shaking as his own words betrayed him. "I had to survive. I had no choice." The old soldier had simply turned off the TV. He'd heard enough excuses to last a lifetime. Now he watched the morning mist rise over his lawn, sunlight breaking through the clouds like a shy visitor. His chest ached, but not from anger. It was the ache of a burden finally set down. Still, under the peace was something else, emptiness. Because vengeance, no matter how justified, never truly fills the hole it was meant to heal. He reached for the photograph on the small table beside him. Echo Squad, 1971. The edges were worn, corners curled from years of being held, remembered, regretted. He traced their faces one last time, voice rough as gravel. "It's done, boys. You can rest now." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and earth, the same scent that once filled the jungles where they fought. Walter closed his eyes, feeling it against his skin. He imagined the others walking beside him again, whole and young, laughing as they disappeared into the light. He leaned back, letting the morning sun warm his face. His heart felt lighter than it had in 50 years. He didn't know how many more mornings he had left, but for the first time, that didn't matter. His war, was finally over. Somewhere, in the faint hum of the world waking up, he thought he heard Ray's voice. "Mission accomplished, Sarge." Walter smiled. Justice had come slow, but it came. And in the quiet dawn of his final days, the forgotten soldier was forgotten no more.